I cannot believe I'm saying this. If Everton beat Manchester United this weekend, they will be 4 points clear. And I'm not saying because it's Manchester United. I'm saying because where were Everton 6 weeks ago to where they are now? They've won 4 of their last 5 games, including the draw in the Merseyside derby. And on the flip side, Manchester United just lost to Spurs, and they were dreadful.
Yeah, I mean, you see in here really what a good manager who's very motivated and very passionate about the club can do with players who also care and want to fight for the badge, compared to mercenaries who are only bothered about money, and a manager who is completely out of his depth. And that is what you're seeing. I mean, I think we could all suspect, anyone who watched football could suspect that David Moyes would come back in at Everton and do a very good job, because we know that he has love for the club. We know he's pragmatic, and we know that he will play to the players' best abilities, and that's not what's happening at Manchester United at all. You've got a new manager in there who is managing at a level that he is very unused to. The difference between Sporting and Manchester United, no disrespect, Sporting are a big club in Portugal and they have good European pedigree, but it's not Manchester United, and it's not the pressure that comes with that. And I think his duty so far, I think he's failed in his responsibility. I don't think he's looking at the players there, and you look at that team, that's a £1 billion squad. And he's not playing to the best of any of their abilities. He's trying to fit them all into a system which clearly doesn't work and isn't working, and the players are uncomfortable with. And I think this is very much like a battle of heart in Everton against a Manchester United team who really lack any sort of heart. They lack any sort of desire in games. I think that Spurs game, we were discussing it off air, like, Spurs are so easy to get at. You make one big tackle in midfield and you can attack them. But Manchester United didn't really bother. They didn't seem like they actually cared that much about winning the game, and that's what's disappointed me, because these are players who are being paid a lot of money and who should be fighting for the shirt, and they're not.
I said it when I was watching the game when Garnacho had that chance where he put in Rosette, and I thought to myself, if he was, and no disrespect to him because I think he will come good, but if he was in the red and white of Southampton or the white and black of Fulham, then nobody cares about that moment. Yeah. And I think because he's in the red of Manchester United and people are going, oh, he could have scored that. But if you think about his track record, and I think they are running into this problem a lot, his track record suggests he's going to miss that chance. Yeah. And if you look at Manchester United's last 4 league games, last 5 games, they scored 2 obviously in the Europa, scored 2 against Leicester, but Maguire's goal was offside, didn't score against Palace, didn't score against Tottenham, and scored a deflected goal against Fulham. This team can't score goals.
Who they need for this game is Marcus Rashford. He loves it against Everton. He scored 5 in his last 5 against Everton for Manchester United. Obviously, he's playing in the claret and blue of Aston Villa and playing decent football as well. But it's the team, because you pointed out Garnacho, and it's ironic that we're talking about a game against Everton. Last year against Everton, scored one of the greatest goals in Premier League history. But he's regressed, and he's a player that I believe has got incredible ability. Maybe he needs to improve certain aspects of his game, but I think he's got the ability to be a top player. Same as Kobbie Mainoo, who we're going to talk about in a separate video. I think he's got the ability to be a top player. But nobody, when they put on a Manchester United shirt, looks like a good footballer. And that can't just be a coincidence. They can't all be terrible players. There is something culture-wise, there's something inherent that is holding some of these players back, because you're not telling me that all of these players are terrible footballers. I know that their intentions in terms of signing for Manchester United could be questioned, but they are footballers at the end of the day who have ability and did have ability when they played for the previous clubs. I'm not here bigging up Anthony, but look at his record since going to Betis. Look at his, 4 goals and assists in 3 games. He was never hitting those numbers at Manchester United. Granted, easier league. Granted, he's more of the man in that system. He's starting games. But there is something toxic at that football club that I thought that Ruben Amorim could fix. We both did. I don't think he can. And you look at the juxtaposition between these two sides, they're at different planes right now. Everton are going that way and Man United going that way. And I don't see things changing this weekend.
That then leads me to think, like, what's the best possible outcome in this scenario? Because, as I said at the top of the video, if Everton go 4 points clear of United, I genuinely don't see a point where United will claw that back. So that would mean United are going to finish in the bottom 5 at some point.
I think the league position is irrelevant. I mean, we discussed it on the video last week. I think it doesn't really matter for Manchester United because they're not going to be able to get into Europe. So anything is going to be a failure. And you ask any of the fans who've watched their performances this year, whether they finish 10th or 14th, it's still going to be as painful because they have been horrible to watch and they aren't playing for the shirt and they aren't putting in the effort. I think United do have a good chance of having a moderately successful season if they win the Europa League, because we do know that they are a cup team. You know, they've won the FA Cup against Manchester City last year. No one expected that to happen. They had a relatively poor season and beat the best team in the country. So I do think that there is an avenue for Man United to have a little bit of success. But I do think that Amorim just needs to sort his ideas out before the transfer window, because it's very clear that United are probably going to make wholesale changes in the summer. We know that Amorim has this very fixed style of play, and United players at the moment obviously can't adhere to that. So I think you might just need to be a little bit more pragmatic, and that's what we're seeing on the other side. We're seeing David Moyes. He probably doesn't have the exact players that he wants. He doesn't have his big Fellaini or Thomas Souček style play. He might do in Alcaraz now, but he's got better. But he's being pragmatic, and this is not his team. He doesn't know any of these players, and he's come in. He's figured out what their strengths are, and he's just using that to elevate themselves up the league, which I don't think Amorim is doing.
So then I would ask the question to almost play devil's advocate to what Kim just said there. When Ten Hag was in the job, everyone said adapt. He adapted, lost his principles, and everyone absolutely slandered him for it afterwards. And I think Amorim himself has said, this is how I play, this is what I do, and this is what I'm known for, and I'm not going to change. So then if he starts now adapting, then we're probably going to say, hold on a minute, you're doing exactly what Ten Hag did.
No, yeah, he needs to stick to his principles to an extent, but Man United need to be getting results. That's the problem. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place. I'm always of the belief that if you're a manager, you stick to your principles, and if the results aren't going your way, then it's then incumbent on the board or management above you to sack you or get rid of you because you're not getting results. But I think when you start to flip-flop and change your principles, the messaging dilutes the players and you start to lose respect in the dressing room. I think we saw that from Ten Hag. And so with Amorim, it's not working, and I would like to see a little bit more flexibility. For example, I always bring it back to this example. Arteta had his principles, but he also had his players when he first came in at Arsenal, and he had to adjust. He played three at the back, was a little bit more pragmatic. He is a pragmatic manager at his core, and they won the FA Cup. I know you said league positions don't matter, but the stick that we used to beat Arsenal fans with is, Arteta finished 8th, then 8th, and 5th. Man United could finish 18th. And I know that it doesn't matter. There's no difference between finishing 17th and finishing 9th because it means the same. But it will be a stick to beat Manchester United fans with for years and years to come. They end up finishing 16th in the league. They're Man United. That's the equivalent of me looking at the Bundesliga and seeing Bayern Munich sitting at 16th.
They're not anymore. They're not Man United anymore. They are by name, but not by anything else.
And that's what I think is the most shocking thing to people, because there's some teams that you think should be impervious to this kind of thing happening. You look at Real Madrid, you look at Barcelona, you look at Bayern Munich. Barcelona, who've gone through financial turmoil, are still never going to finish outside the top four. And you look at Man United in terms of financial juggernaut that they were and how far ahead they were of everybody else in terms of commercial-wise. Why are they sitting in the bottom half of the table? And that's why I think it's so shocking. That's why I think when you see pundits and ourselves go on TV or go on screen and talk about it, we say they're Man United, because growing up, they ruined my childhood, and I never thought that I'd see them in the bottom half of the table after 25 games.
I think I agree with you both. I think there is a world where Manchester United finishing 15th is irrelevant and doesn't matter, and they can scrap this season. But we've sort of spoken about this off air and said we thought Amorim was going to fix this, and I genuinely think this as well. If he isn't the guy who fixes this, it might be the end of this club. Like you're saying there, but it's not Manchester United. It's not Manchester United, but it can still feel that way. But I think if he is gone. There is no more Manchester United are scary, Old Trafford.
But it's also what exactly are you expecting them to be? You're expecting them to be the Man United of the early 2000s where they would regularly win every league.
No, I think...
But I mean, at the moment, still, they have good support, they get regularly good attendance, they regularly win cups. That's a good football team. We might think that they're failing massively because we have this nostalgic notion of Manchester United always being the best. But football changes. Everton won the league in the 70s. City went 40 years without a trophy and have now won 6 in the last 7. Football changes and it's cyclical, and we expect Manchester United to have just stayed at the top forever. But they've had terrible owners who've made terrible decisions for the last 15 years. So they're not going to be that club anymore. So whether they finish 15th, you might beat them you might beat the fans with a stick, and it's really funny, especially for me as a City fan. United ruined my childhood as well, not just yours. Yeah. And it's fantastic to see them where they are as a fan. But at the same time, we just have to accept that maybe this is just the new normal now.
But the new normal, when Liverpool were going through it, remember Liverpool were the most dominant team in the 70s and 80s, not just in England, but in Europe. The doldrums weren't this. Liverpool was still, I think, the lowest they'd be finishing is 8th in the Premier League, and they had some really poor footballers. This is abnormal, and the level of dominance that Man United exerted over the rest of the league in terms of their draw, their pulling power, their ability to pay players was that of a team that you didn't think would ever be able to be caught, and they have been caught, and they are now one of the worst teams in the Premier League, which is just insane to think about.
The one thing that I don't have an answer for, and I genuinely don't understand it, is I feel like there is a curse on the club at the moment because, as you mentioned, like the players that they bring in are always better before and after they go to United. But the position is so strange because they spend so much money. And not every transfer can be bad. But Anthony can't have been a terrible player because he's just gone to Betis. And as you say, it might be an easier league, but he's showing signs of being a fantastic footballer. So what happens when you walk through those doors?
Honestly, I think
Europa League draw. Who could Man United and Tottenham face in the last 16 after the conclusion of the playoffs? Manchester United and Tottenham have learned their possible Europa League last 16 opponents ahead of Friday's draw. The knockout playoff round concluded on Thursday, with the winners of the 8 ties joining those who finished in the top 8 of the league phase. United, Spurs, and the other 14 teams left in Europe's second-tier competition will find out who they will face when UEFA conducts the draw at their headquarters in Nyon. The Premier League sides will be placed in opposite halves of the bracket as a result of being paired together after United ended the league stage in third, a place ahead of Spurs. It also meant they could be drawn against the same 4 opponents in the round of 16: AZ Alkmaar, Galatasaray, Real Sociedad and Midtjylland. And following the conclusion of the playoffs, United and Spurs know they will face either AZ Alkmaar or Real Sociedad. Dutch side AZ Alkmaar overcame Galatasaray in their 2-legged tie, while Real Sociedad edged past Danish club Midtjylland. A 4-1 win in the first leg in Holland effectively sealed AZ's spot in the last 16, which they sealed 6-3 on aggregate, while La Liga outfit Real Sociedad beat Midtjylland 7-3 over the 2 legs. Rangers, meanwhile, will take on either Fenerbahce or Bodo Glimt. United last played Real Sociedad in the group stage of the 2022-2023 Europa League, losing 1-0 at home and winning 1-0 in Spain. Their most recent clashes with AZ Alkmaar came in the 2019-20 Europa League group stage, with a 0-0 draw in the Netherlands followed by a 4-0 United victory at Old Trafford. Spurs beat Alkmaar 1-0 at home in the league phase of this year's competition. They have never faced Real Sociedad in a competitive fixture. The first leg of the round of 16 is due to take place on March 6 with the returns a week later. Both United and Spurs will be at home in the second leg. Teams are now able to plot their potential route to the final as they can only play sides on their side of the bracket before the showpiece clash in Bilbao on May 21. Unlike previous iterations of UEFA competitions, teams are no longer drawn against each other in the knockout stages. They are instead placed into one of 2 possible places in the bracket, which has been predetermined based on their placing in the league phase. Europa League last 16 draw. All you need to know as Manchester United and Tottenham learn their opponents for the next round of the competition. A fresh look to the Europa League has provided it with added gloss, but the action throughout the competition has been as exciting as ever. The new inclusion of a playoff round prior to the last 16 has also seen some familiar European names fall away at an early stage in the competition. However, Premier League giants Manchester United and Tottenham haven't had to worry, having secured an automatic spot in the last 16 by virtue of finishing in the top 8 of the initial group phase. After Thursday's results, it's now confirmed that the Premier League sides will face either AZ Alkmaar or Real Sociedad in the next round of the competition. The draw to confirm every team's route to the final will be held on Friday, February 21, which is where things may become somewhat confusing. United and Spurs finished 3rd and 4th in the league table format, meaning they will make up one seeded pair in the draw. Ties for the last 16 are scheduled to be played on Thursday, March 6, with the return legs a week later on Thursday, March 13. UEFA state that clubs are paired based on their positions at the end of the league phase to form 4 seeded pairs: clubs in positions 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and 7 and 8. The clubs in each seeded pair are drawn into one of two positions in the round of 16 against the relevant winner of the knockout phase playoffs, whose position was determined by the knockout phase playoff draw. 4 bowls are prepared for this draw, 2 for the silver side of the bracket and 2 for the orange side of the bracket. Each bowl contains 2 balls representing the winners of the round of 16 matches from one rung of the relevant side of the bracket, with the first silver bowl containing slips of paper marked winners are 16-1 and winners are 16-2, and the second silver bowl winners are 16-3 and winners are 16-4. The first bowl on the orange side will contain slips of paper marked winners are 16-5 and winners are 16-6 and, finally, winners are 16-7 and winners are 16-8 in the second bowl on the orange side. The draw starts by shuffling and then drawing the balls placed in the first bowl of the silver side of the bracket. The first ball drawn from this bowl indicates the team which will play the first match of the quarter-final at home, and the second ball the team which will play the return leg at home.